Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia, all the way in Romania.
Welcome back, everybody.
And today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that I've been seeing quite prevalent, not just here in the United States, but I think it's globally. The use of emotions to control populations, or using emotions to control people. So I've seen it, and I'm seeing it being used actively in the United States. So for instance, if the government can get a person to think emotionally, tie an emotion to a belief system, what they're pushing, then they have a higher chance of controlling that person than they do if they were to just present a logical case to that person. So what I'm seeing is it's actually a manipulation of a population using emotions for a desired outcome.
It's not only in the United States, it's the same in Europe and everywhere. I think it is the same. So, and it's something they've been doing in the last, I don't know, since the politics started in Greece. I think manipulation is something that and I remember reading about it. They keep doing so much research about it, trying to manipulate masses. And now you can very, very, very clearly see that the people who respond emotionally are the ones that are now on the social media crying about what happened. It's so many people crying and being so angry about it. But if you try to ask them why, they wouldn't be able to tell you, because their response is just emotionally. It's just emotional.
They've taken an emotional state of mind, they've tied it to a belief system. So that's key, right? So in order for this to actually happen, the government has to be able, or whoever's trying to manipulate the other person, and I'm not telling people to do this is bad, but they have to present a case, create a belief system out of that case, and then get the individual or the population to emotionally respond to all three of those. It's like a stacked manipulation. So, for instance, we can talk about women's rights. So, and we've talked about in our feminist podcast 1 and 2. You can check those out. We can even link those in the description. Just like how that manipulation has been festering, at least in the United States, for an extended period of time. But with that, they have gotten women to think emotionally about something rather than logically about something. The belief system is, so the case is that women's rights are going to go away. The belief system is the constant, pushing that the beliefs are going to be taken away, backed up by using mainstream media, or we should say corporate media, specific talking points that are designed to instill fear. Once that happens, the targeted population then becomes afraid of a potential outcome, women losing rights. Personally, I don't think they're going to be losing any rights. But they feel like they're going to be losing rights. And that is where they're coming out with this big emotional response, that feeling that they're losing their rights. They're not thinking that they're going to lose rights. They're feeling it. A lot of people have transitioned away from, you'll see it on social media. A lot of TikTokers and influencers will say, I feel like this is the case, rather than I think this is the case. That is because the government has transitioned them from using their brains to emotions. And as we know, humans are emotional creatures.
Yeah, just like they're feeling cats or dogs or wolves, whatever. But first of all, what I want to say, as a former journalist, is that I'm ashamed with the media today, the way they manipulate and they sell themselves, it's such horrible. I cannot believe they are doing it. They don't care about the outcome. They only care about doing what they're paid for. So I don't think they really believe what they're saying. It's just manipulation through fear.
Mhm.
That's what works best, right? Second of all, I've seen Donald Trump saying just after the elections about the IVF treatments that are going to be free for everyone, and all the expenses with kids until 2 years old are going to be deducted from taxes. So who is taking your rights? I mean, it's a great. I felt so. I have a friend in the United States. They spend so much money on IVF treatments, and I was thinking about her, how hard it was for them to do it, and now so many women have these free treatments, right? Are gonna have not now, but they're gonna have it. So what I don't like in these days, Micah, is that people are not looking at facts.
Mhm.
They are just looking at what they've heard on social media or on TV. They are not used anymore to search for truth. You know, we've talked about searching for the absolute truth, which is, we're never gonna find the absolute one, but at least the logical one in these days we can find it. I mean, you can watch this guy talking, you can watch that guy talking, you can listen to what they're saying and just get some conclusions from it. But instead of this, instead of checking facts, I have friends who are saying about, who are talking about women rights, and Trump is going to take them, and Trump is this and that. And I told them, he's been president for 4 years, and he never did it. Why would you think that he's doing this now? I mean, check the facts. And that is something that we should teach our children, how to think, how to find information, the real information, not the disinformation that they are serving us
Right.
on me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from TikTok. Uh,
Mm, yeah.
there was a time
But
period
it
where,
also comes, like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it also comes from CNN and this kind of media.
Mhm. So I mean, yeah, that's I mean, this if I looked at some of the charts, a lot of the media is, far left leaning.
Mm,
So it would only make sense that they would push the same talking points, right? And if you look at it, they're actually using the exact same words. So
hmm
what they're this is also an manipulation, right? You say something enough times that you get people to believe it, right? They don't look into it. They're like you're supposed to trust you, right? But
hmm
they're
Yeah.
presenting these emotional states, this belief system. They're installing a belief system in order to fear monger and drive a population one way or another. And you're
Mhm.
right. Donald Trump, I did see an article where he put in something about IVF treatment was going to be mandated to be done by like insurance companies. We're going to have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
that is definitely an increase in right. What I am seeing is like they're saying women's rights are going away, but they'll still be able to work. You'll still be able to talk. You'll still be able to go outside. You'll still be able to walk next to somebody. Um, there's so many things that like that's such a broad statement. Our rights are being taken away. But where did this come from? Well, if one campaign pushes that belief system and then that belief system is then pushed through media, that's all that they're hearing. They're not
hmm
potentially right. The search for truth would come from looking at different the campaign policy websites or like the governmental policy websites or whatever's there. But one thing that did pop up was their fear of losing abortion rights. And so that one's an interesting topic. Me, like I said, I don't care, but because I don't have, I don't give birth. So for me, it's like whatever. However, I do have a time frame where that to me is appropriate. They're
hmm
inflating losing rights to losing the ability to essentially terminate a pregnancies whenever they want. So they've used this term in order to push this agenda. And maybe that's the right thing to do. Because if you have a life within you and you kill it, I can't go and say, "Oh, I don't want to be married. Let me kill my wife." You know, I mean, people have done that, but it's illegal, right? It's wrong. It's
Yeah.
morally incorrect to kill somebody because you just don't want them in your life.
Mhm.
So, where does that line kind of find itself with the abortion rights issue? Well, if you look at what the media has pushed and what one side has pushed, it's anytime, including after failed abortions. If
It's uh, for Europe, this is something unbelievable. If you were to think about this, what's happening in Europe, it would mean that the women here have lost their rights since a very long time ago, because in here since forever it's been like 3.5 months. And I've seen videos with girls calling to clinics to terminate pregnancy in the 8th or 9th month. That's crazy for Europe. I mean, it's unbelievable, really unbelievable. And I also know that in some states, they said that you can give birth and then you can decide what's happening with the product. How could you talk about a kid, a child, a newborn like this? Like, how can you think of it like a to a product, right? It's for Europe is crazy. And what's interesting is that so many women are determined to keep this. How don't you have any conscience? And then you shouldn't have a child. What are you going to do with a child if you think like this right now? And saying that a man shouldn't be allowed to have an opinion about it, I don't agree with it, because the man is the father. I
Mhm,
think the father should have a saying in it. uh, yes, the woman is carrying the baby, but the man should have the same right to have an opinion about it. I mean,
mhm,
you are the fathers, right? We're
mhm,
not doing this, babies alone.
mhm. And yeah, I think it's interesting because, but that's the fear push. That's the belief system that they're going to lose the right to do that. But where are the baby's rights? So
Mhm.
back to like
But
the
just
government
let me ask you
pushing.
some. Let me ask you something, Mike. Sorry to interrupt you again. Did anyone say that the American women are not going to be allowed to have abortion at all?
No.
From my understanding is that the states are gonna vote for what's gonna happen, so it's a democratic vote about on it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think they're the fear push again. The belief system was that was put out by the Democrats and Kamala Harris campaign. The belief system was that it was going to be a nationwide abortion ban. And
Mm.
not once has Trump said that he was going to do a nationwide abortion ban. But the government used that belief system to push this narrative out to women. And here's one thing we know about women more so than men is that women advertise themselves as emotional creatures. They've also advertised themselves as being very, very smart and intelligent and free thinkers. Well,
Mhm.
if that's the case, they would have looked into the fact that, Kamala Harris used Project 2025 as the big thing, which called for a nationwide abortion ban. Trump distanced himself from that. And then also the Harris campaign came out, I think it was yesterday, and said that, they knew Project 2025 wasn't tied to Trump. They just, misled voters on purpose, I guess. But when we look at that kind of push, why? They're manipulating people. The like a narcissistic abuser in a relationship, a sociopathic abuser in a relationship manipulates people's emotions in order to get a response, positive or negative, so they can get some sort of power or control over something. And what's scary is that our government was behaving the exact same way.
True. It is scary. That's the word here, because they don't care for those people, and those people are not being. When you have a panic attack, you cannot think straight. You're just scared and you just react to it. It's the same with those people, but on the long term,
Mm-hmm.
they lose their ability to think, to go back to the roots of the problem and see, did Trump said anything about banning abortion? Did Kamala said anything about it? Who said it? Where did it start, and so on? So no one is doing it. They're just consummate this news, this fear mongering news. That's what they are. And they don't think anymore for themselves, and that's what they want. That's how I feel. That's what they want. This kind of people is what they want,
That's
because
exactly
you
what the
can
government.
control.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what the government wants. If the government can get you to function in emotion rather than logic, that's where
Mhm.
they have you. That's where they've got you. That's where I think the DEI push came from. The LGBTQ AIP plus, whatever push is more there because they're getting people to think emotionally or function in their emotion rather than use their brain. And once you can get somebody to do that, any narcissistic abuser knows that once you've got somebody in an emotional state, you can pluck their strings and operate them like a marionette. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what I've seen governments, not just in the United States, across the world do. And it's sad to say, but if our government's being abusive to us in order to further an agenda, like what what does that say about our government? With
Mhm.
that being said, the same people that believe that thinking with their feelings uh, is correct and then they can do whatever they want. When they do that, now that they've lost this election, they're starting to be sad and angry and these emotional outbursts and these very like there's one thing to be upset at a policy decision that infringes the whole nation, right? So censorship, banning guns, at least here in America, right? So like all of those things, importing people on taxpayer dollars, right? All of that kind of stuff, sending our monies overseas. That's to me is a big deal. Yes, I get angry about it, but I don't uh, emote so much that I'm like, now they're shaving their heads. They're talking about tattoos. I've seen TikToks of people calling for shooting men, killing the president, poisoning men. Like, what essentially has happened is because the government has put these people into an emotional state of mind and they've targeted women for this, they've literally abused women for this. These people are now suffering essentially what is an ego injury, a narcissistic injury. They are feeling the loss rather than seeing the loss. And they're in fear because their leaders told them to be afraid.
Oh yeah.
That's not what a leader should be doing. A leader should be empowering their people rather than putting them into the box of fear box to control them.
Hmm. That's true. You said that they should do whatever they want. I think it's the time that they shouldn't do whatever they want. You know, I'm more radical than you are. They shouldn't do whatever they should think about the society in the future. Not so many people are thinking about it, and we've talked about it when I was talking to you about the parents of the teenager I'm working with. They never thought about preparing their kids for making a better society. But it's time to do this. And this shift in America, I think, is going to change so many things in a good way. I hope it's going to be like that. Um, and it's time to take responsibility. I mean, I think that this what the Democrats did in America showed that how many mental disabled people are for real. I mean, I feel so sorry for them. They should be treated. They should have some treatment, whatever. Yeah,
Well, they've been
they are
technically
traumatized.
abused.
Yeah, and right now they are suffering a trauma, a
Mhm.
really bad one. Yeah, this is why there are so many talking about unliving themselves and, like you said, shaving their heads and crying and hating the others,
Mhm.
getting to them to hate the others. It's unbelievable.
I mean, the government Democrats have literally taken in like a group of people and turned them against an entire race of people.
Mhm.
Uh, Anybody that didn't vote their way, they've literally turned them angry, violent towards them.
Yeah.
They've managed to manipulate them into this emotional state. They're all depressed. Yes, they should be getting treated, but also these people are the same people that are trying to advertise how strong they are and how resilient they are, or how resilient their candidate would have been. If I remember correctly, when the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris lost the election, she did not even come out and speak to any of the people at her, at the DNC meeting or headquarters or wherever that she was supposed to, if she were to win, come out and give the speech. She didn't thank anybody. She didn't do anything. She just scurried off. And to me, that doesn't show strength of a woman. It doesn't like, I mean, and to show that she's in $20 million worth of debt, if you can't balance the budget for your campaign, how are you supposed to lead and balance the budget for the United States? I mean, it just shows a consistent um, betrayal of the people that actually were supposed to be following, but the people that are in that emotional state are feeling the loss. Now they're
Mhm.
like election denying. They're gonna. I mean, they're acting out against people. I mean, I know somebody that doesn't tell anybody their vote. They won't
Mhm.
tell me their vote. This is my mom. She won't tell me. She won't tell me her vote. Which way? Nothing.
Mhm.
She's a woman. She also is exactly the same. She If she were to say, "Hey, I'm not telling you who I'm voting for," to one of these people, she would be probably accosted, verbally attacked, potentially even like assaulted or yelled at, whatever, because she wants to remain quiet. This is the doing of the people running these other people, literally pulling their strings, manipulating them the entire way. And I think
Yeah.
now, I mean, some people have started to see that, but I watch TikTok where I see these threads on X where they're just having these absolute meltdowns, and I'm just like, it's one thing to get angry, but your logic is sound. It's another thing to be angry in a belief system that's not actually true.
Yeah.
So I know that you wanted to talk about also, so like I've talked about like how they've used information to manipulate a population into an emotional state, right? You wanted to talk about the dangers of disinformation. Both of those things go hand in hand. So why don't you cue us up with some information on disinformation?
I'm gonna be very honest with you. In Europe, it's been like we were the ones who are voting in America. Everyone was talking about it, of course, because it's gonna be a huge shift in the world. That's how I feel about it. So I chose the same thing that your mother chose. I decided to talk only to close friends and not with all of them because some of them are very against Trump because they heard. I heard that he's like this. I just heard that he's like that. Where did you hear it? Did you hear him saying this or not? So I didn't want to get into this kind of talks. But what surprised me so much, it was that big journalists in Romania and Denmark were against Trump without even knowing what this abortion thing was about. So you don't even know what it is about. They thought that it's going to be a ban. And I talked to one of them and I asked them, did you hear Trump saying this? No, but I've just heard it on CNN. So if the journalists are not doing this, like fact checking and so on, how could you expect a teenager do it, for example?
Mhm.
It's very dangerous. I don't understand how these people don't have a conscience.
Mhm.
Really. I was watching CNN and not only them, but I'm talking about them because I'm very, very disappointed in them in the last years. So I was watching them and I was wondering, how can someone lie so much without any, like, meaning, don't you have any, I don't know, like don't you feel sorry about what you're doing? Don't you have any conscience? Don't you have like when you go to sleep at night, do you think about what you're doing? Because what the part of the population they're addressing to, there are people that are, as you've seen, searching for their identity. And they said, okay, we're gonna give you identities then. You can choose between a cat, a wolf, whatever. Right? They took this in such a bad place for the ones that are truly suffering with gender dysphoria. So there's people who are really suffering with this. So these ones are now laughed at because of the other ones who didn't know who they are, but instead of searching themselves inside of themselves, right?
Mhm.
They they just took it from the Democrats. Okay, we can be whatever we want to be. I know someone who said that they're a demon, so and they wanted to be called demon.
Mhm.
Demon, some numbers after it. So it's clearly that the people you are addressing as a journalist, they're not very mentally stable. They're still searching for themselves. You should try to help them stabilize, or being more logical, being more factual, and so on. But instead of this gross manipulation is disgusting for me.
It's gross manipulation of the masses. And here's how they do it, right? So, not only is the mainstream media or corporate media push absolutely insane, they can push out ideas across so many different channels. So, like MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, right? Even Fox News, even News Nation. If you actually look at the shareholders for or the owners of those companies, you can trace back each of those companies to
Yeah,
three different companies: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And all three of those companies are the biggest investors in themselves.
yeah.
So they're all of these media companies get their marching orders and then they just deliver the message. It's literally propaganda push, rather than true investigative journalism. I think that's why X is actually picking up so much, is because you can have people on the ground, an everyday citizen can literally report on something that they're seeing in real time on X, which is also why I think the government's trying to censor X, right? They're going after him in Europe. They're going after him, in Brazil, wherever they want to censor free speech. I think it's
Mhm.
good that Elon Musk bought X for that particular reason, because I heard Kamala Harris, she wants to regulate speech, right? It's to prevent disinformation. Well, who's going to be the arbiter of truth, as they say, right? What I found is that more times than not, the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, or the people that are running our current government have put out more disinformation or hid stuff from people, whether they put in FOIA requests or they just said they didn't want to answer it, or they gave non-answers on testimony. All of that is more than enough to qualify for disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, however you want to classify it. And they're the ones that are actually pushing this. So, censorship of the truth while pushing the disinformation. As you see a machine lose its grasp over a population, you'll see it struggle to fight more to regain that control. With that being said, mainstream media pushes that narrative over and over and over again. Trump's going to have a national abortion ban. Every phrasing of each sentence, coverage of Donald Trump is like 90% negative, while Kamala Harris was like 90% positive. There's like, and that's where the shift is, right? So if people are only seeing that, remember, you can tell somebody something so many times that they will start to believe it. They're gaslighting the American people. Number one word in the world right now, gaslight. And that's
Yeah.
it. That's another abusive tactic. They put somebody into an emotional state and they're gaslighting them at the same time. Governments are acting very narcissistic these days. Um, and I see it over in Europe. I saw a lot of people, at least on a chart, I don't know individually, that wanted, Kamala Harris as the president, and some people that wanted Donald Trump.
Mhm.
It's interesting to see how different people are living and where they want. who the president of the United States is. It's scary to see the disinformation and misinformation come out. Now, how do they do it? Well, they start young. Why do you think we have the DEI and the LGBTQ push in schools?
Mm-hmm.
It's to start people. One, if you're confused about who you are, the government can now come in and say, okay, you can be whatever you want to be, right? And and they get to tell you who you are now. They get to install your belief systems. So not only, remember, we talked about this in our feminism podcast, the traditional family is less and less, right? So these kids go to school, then these surrogate parents, teachers, start stepping in, delivering their belief system. Well, most school systems are dominated by Democratic, you know, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that push isn't coming from the parents, it's coming from the schools. Now you've got kids that are going to be more emotionally reactive, maybe have more mental health issues. And you're right, this election has exposed a lot of mental health issues within the community that says that they're very, very strong while they're having mental breakdowns at the
Mm-hmm.
loss of the election, but they don't realize that they're being manipulated the entire time. Get into schools, right? Once a kid's in, moving through grade school and starts to become an adult, you've got years, right? Up to what, 18 years when you start to hit college in the United States of people telling you what's right, what's wrong. And the if that's DI or LGBTQ or like pro censorship or pro this or that, you're going to see that emerge out of an 18-year-old. Then you put that into college, where most colleges in the United States are very pro democratic. Now you've created literally a machine to churn out Democratic voters. Put that in the real world. Well, you've got people that are, confused about who they are. You've got people right where the government wants them. You've got them emotionally reactive, right where the government wants them. You've got people that are unfit. We've talked about healthy foods. We've talked about, mental resilience, right where the government wants them. They're unhealthy. They're, eating poison. They're not, I'm not literal. I mean, technically, sometimes it could be literal poison mixed in with their food. In Europe, you don't have this problem. You've got all of these things to what? Create a population that can be controlled.
Oh yeah, a population of slaves, actually. That's what it is. That's what they want. That's how I feel they want. And I'm so happy that I think it was a surprise, and I've seen Trump, it was a surprise even for him,
Mm-hmm.
the huge amount of support that he's got. And I feel that it was like, for me, it was like I could breathe again in the morning when I woke up and I've seen the results, because the world was not going in a good place, unfortunately.
No, there wasn't. I definitely see a shift, but I also know, right? So like the previous election, there were some issues. I know there were. And
Mm.
then some people are wondering like where did, 81 million votes go? And, some people are like, oh, there was no evidence of, a stolen election. And I'm like, sometimes it's not that there's evidence of, sometimes it's the ghost. We've got this 20 million votes that are just somewhere non-existent, right? And so when I look at that, we can see the machine, school systems, elections, manipulating emotions, right? I mean, not just on the abortion issue. I mean, we've got people thinking in race now. And I think it started several years ago with Obama, where we started to get back into more race stuff.
Yeah.
We started
It
to,
should have been,
we went,
it
we
should
went
have
like this to this.
It should have been the other way around. When you have a black president, you would think that things change in a better way, but it went back to what it was. I like Robert Kennedy Jr. so much. I really like him. And he he's doing this Maha thing, right? Make America healthy again.
Mhm.
And he was talking about the fact that the kids in America are the sickest kids in the world,
Mhm.
which I find so troubling.
Mhm. I mean, is it true?
That's what he says.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Uh,
you see it over there in Romania. Tell me about your experience. Like, what do you see in your kids over there in Romania?
in Romania, the problem is that we use so much. I mean, the doctors are prescribing so much antibiotics, and this is where a problem comes in because you know that the antibiotics are not very healthy. But we don't have that many sick kids. We don't have so many obese kids like in the United States or like for example in England. There's so many kids sick over there as well. We don't have chronic diseases, that many chronic diseases. We don't have that many allergies. And in Denmark, it's even better because in Denmark you don't have that many sick kids. You don't have it. I mean, while we were in Denmark, Maria has never been sick. Never. I never gave her any pills, anything.
So I think,
Because
oh, go ahead.
they are just having this, and in Romania as well, you know, we prefer to cook the meals at home mostly. We always try to have a salad on the table, no matter what we are having. We have a salad on the table. At the same time, the countryside is still working in Romania. And the kids can go there and they can just pick the fruits from the trees. In Denmark, on the other side, I think they are very healthy because they are spending so much time outside.
Mhm.
So if you have the kid in school in Denmark, you are very sure that they're going to spend at least 1 hour outside. That's the long break, and they also have small breaks of 15 minutes. So they're always outside, no matter the weather. So it can be rainy, it can be the only exception is when it's foggy. Otherwise, you have the kids outside all the time. No one is getting scared if the kid is having a fever except if it's getting very high. So they are not treating it, just they just let the body fight with it. At the same time, it's not this culture of cereals. In the morning, we eat different things, not cereals, which we know now how bad they are.
Mhm.
And I was listening to Robert Kennedy talking about this morning breakfast that these big companies you talked about earlier, and there's two more he's talking about. They wanted to sell their cereals, so they decided to tell the population how good the cereals are. But they're not good. And if you think about it, they have so much sugar. First of all, they have so much sugar in it, and everything is genetically modified. Again, uh, problem.
Mhm. So I think you
So I
bring
think
up a really good tie-in because we were talking about like, like we were talking about like how Obama, like back a few years ago, at least in the Obama era, right? The nation started to become divided, right? On
Mhm.
top of that, if you combine that with the kids being unhealthy, right, starts in the school, right? So these people are being told these things while also being fed unhealthy things, either by their parents or by proxy through the school. And so, what is the outcome? And I think that you're pointing out a pretty good indicator of the outcome on healthy kids across America. I think it's good to have somebody fighting for those kids.
Also, I've heard Robert Kennedy saying that you have almost 1,000 ingredients that we don't have it in Europe.
Mhm.
I mean, they are not allowed. They are considered poison. And you said this word earlier, and this is how I remembered about what he said about this. So you have so much poison in the food,
Mhm.
which is terrible. I mean, what it's like you said, it's like a circle that they can manipulate you mentally and physically. Because
Mhm.
when you have a chronic disease, you go to the pharmacy, right? And you buy stuff. And this is what they don't want you to die. They want you to be sick but alive. So you would buy more and more medicine from them.
But also think about this. I mean, you're buying more food. Americans, we eat way more food than most other countries can, right? and we consume it and we waste a lot more food than most other countries, right? On top of that, if you combine the belief system usage of fear in creating this thought process of putting people in that emotional state. I touched on this in the other podcast, and we've touched on food in a previous podcast and governmental control and stuff like that. But if you have a nation that is obese, overweight, or chronically sick, they can't fight back. You combine that with the stuff that we're talking about back in, when Obama started to come around, the nation started to divide again and created all of that division between people. A nation divided cannot unite to fight against the machine. I mean, and I say machine, they call it the deep state, but it's basically the unelected bureaucrats that are essentially running our government. Um, and so when you look at everything that they've done, emotional states, food, fear, propaganda pushed by corporate media, these are not nice things. These are things that, some people are getting rich, some people are not. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about how, like, the tax break thing isn't going to happen and, like, whatever. But here's what I'm seeing. When they talk about equity, are they actually talking about redistribution of wealth? Well, they're actually redistributing your wealth now. They're taxing you and spending it on programs that are not going anywhere or wasting that money. They're taxing you, they're sending that money out of the country, which doesn't benefit Americans no matter how much they tell you it does. They're taxing you, and then they're not spending that money on you, right?
No, it's the same in Europe. It's like this redistribution is in their favor, not in the masses' favor. It's
Mhm.
only in their favor.
But like equity, right? Redistribution of wealth. Well, all right. So, how many rich people own more than one mansion? Are they going to start giving out rooms for free to those mansions? Are the rich people, the people that are running these big companies, corporations, people in our Congress that are somehow getting more and more rich off of probably insider trading? Are, like people like Obama that have, a couple of mansions, or even uh, Joe Biden, I believe, has a couple of mansions. Are they going to redistribute the wealth down? Are they going to liquidate their assets and distribute their money so everyone can end up in the same place? I remember hearing Kamala saying that, like everyone should end up in the same place. It's not equal opportunity, it's equal outcome. Well, if you start to look at it, none of those people are moving in the direction of equal outcome. What's happening is they're taking money from everybody that's below them, redistributing it how they want to redistribute it. But what it's happening is it's making everybody else more poor and reliant on the government while they stay rich.
It's the same in Europe, and this is one of the part that we celebrated for. It's because we feel that is the war in Ukraine is gonna end. And first of all, you think about those people there, the normal ones who are dying for nothing. They are just killed, okay, in the war. It doesn't matter if they're Ukrainians, Russians, or whatever is going to that war. They are dying.
Mm-hmm.
The civilians as well are dying. And I know that Turkey's president tried to do negotiations with them, but Biden said no. So why did Biden say said no? This is something I couldn't understand.
So, like, I don't know necessarily a lot about the Ukraine Russia war in terms of what you guys are seeing over there, but here's what I can tell you. They're taxing us and they're sending our money there. Every couple of
Yeah,
weeks, there's millions of dollars going to that, right?
yeah.
What I can tell you is that Putin has said that there were biolabs in Ukraine. Well, if we funded biolabs in China that created a virus that wiped out millions of people across the planet, it wouldn't be beyond me to believe that there are biolabs in Ukraine. There also are probably minerals in Ukraine, like rare earth minerals that people want to use for their climate change agenda. Remember, climate change, I don't know, right? But also, they're using that to what? Tax you to spend money on it, tax you to spend money on those programs. Apparently, the Inflation Reduction Act has a lot of climate change for America, has a lot of climate change stuff. That's our tax dollars going towards that. Well, how did they get to the point where people were like, that's a good idea? Well, they manipulated those people with fear. They use their emotional state of fear into doing that. Russia, Ukraine, same thing. We need to fight against Russia. Russia's bad here in the United States. So, what have they done? They put the fear this war could spread elsewhere, right? This war could spread,
Yeah.
but it's ongoing. And what is the reason for not having peace talks or shutting it down or whatever? Well, if you look at what I said earlier with the unelected bureaucrats running our government or the military industrial complex, the Pentagon budget that's, infinite and disappears and you can't audit. The way that it's happening is it sounds like it's just being used to take our tax dollars over there and then have those tax dollars used to buy stuff from us. So, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, it looks like it because who's supplying all of the things? We
Sure.
are, right?
Yeah, it's the same in Europe. I mean, you have like because they're in a war, we were forced to take their products that don't respect the European rules. So they can poison the food. They can put some poison on or whatever it's called, chemical things to put on their for example cereals and make them grow faster, and they're serving Europe with it. We don't know what's in it. So we have so many Ukrainian products here because we want to help the war, but we don't know what we're eating actually. At the same time, of course, we're paying a lot for this war. We don't have any more gas from the Russia, and we are buying from America, and it's even more expensive than it was before. So it's we talked about this. It all comes down to the population. We are the ones that are paying for everything, and we're not paying only with money. We are paying with our health and our mental health and so on. So this is why I was so happy for this change, because America is so important because it can literally start trends.
Shape the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that Donald Trump is gonna bring the world. I hope, actually, I also feel that he's gonna do it. He's gonna bring the world in a normal state. I'm not saying that there are rivers. I have some friends who told, do you think it's gonna be rivers of honey on the streets? It's not. I mean, I'm so stuck in reality. I understand what it is to get to be normal. I'm not expecting great things to happen, but at least normality, because they were attacking the kids, they were attacking the less healthy mental people, they were attacking women, they were attacking men because suddenly human became toxic for society, right?
Mhm.
So they were just all they tried was to destroy the society.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I said. Like, you remember, Obama said he wanted to fundamentally change America. Well, how can you do that unless you destroy what's there to install something new? And how did they do that? They did it by dividing people by race, by gender, or by, creating, movements. They did it by fear. They did it through mainstream media propaganda. They've done it through food, and they've done it through the educational institutions. When you see that machine working to grab more power. And the hard part is like even if I were to sit down with somebody that and I try to present them with facts about this, thing, this election. So I recently got married, and my fiance and I, my wife now, posted a picture on our Instagram of us, at our little very small wedding ceremony. We're gonna do a bigger one later. And, you know, somebody decided to comment on it. Well, we tried to engage because of something that we were wearing. And so we tried to engage with that individual. I was a little bit more uh, direct with it, but I only said one thing. And my wife started to respond with, like articles and evidence. And the person came back and said that because we were sending articles and evidence that it was hateful. Now, that doesn't make sense. I mean, one, there was no self-awareness to what their comment was initially when they came to us, considering they were talking about, losing rights and opinions about bodies. I think that's the big one, right? So in this picture, I'm wearing a MAGA hat at our wedding, and so what happened is said she was disappointed about the MAGA hat. Well, I responded just very quickly. I was like, well, isn't it my body, my choice, or are you against that? Because the whole my body, my choice thing is also about people aren't supposed to have opinions about what other people do with their body. And so I pointed that out, didn't get a response. And so uh, my wife tried to engage with this individual who's a family member, like with facts. And they said what we were sending was hateful. And that just brought to my attention that, like, the dangers of disinformation, but also like how hard it is to actually break through to somebody and sit down and have a conversation about these very difficult topics because they're in an emotional state. And when you
Oh,
present to them with facts in this emotional state that one side has put them in, their response is feeling personally attacked. They feel personally attacked when you try to present to them, even if you're being nice. Hey, I'm willing to discuss this with you. Here's some articles. Please read these. They then feel personally attacked because they're thinking with their feelings, they're operating in an emotional state, but also they've been abused so long that they don't know how to function outside of that.
oh
They
yeah.
remember we talked about this in a previous podcast, how people have been put in this victim box, and
Hmm.
that's where they operate from. That's exactly what they want. A nation divided can be changed, conquered, right? A nation united, right? They don't want us united. Our government, no government wants a people united that can keep the government in check. The government wants to keep the people in check, not the other way around. Well, our Constitution says otherwise. Our
Yeah.
Constitution says we, the people, are supposed to be keeping the government in check. So far, the government has grown exponentially, used, taxation. They've used regulation. They've created more programs. They've incentivized, non-traditional families. They've incentivized women going to work to increase their tax revenue that they can then spend on, whatever, or create new government programs. I think Elon's going to do a great job by reducing government and government spending because it goes either one way. We keep going one direction or we go a different direction. And from what I've seen, I'm hoping that we can turn America into something that our founding fathers saw the vision when they were creating the founding documents. They saw a vision of America, what they wanted it to be, and how it was supposed to go. And I think money, greed, corruption has, kind of taken control of people. Now, on the opposite side, what happens? Well, not everything that's good can't always stay good. There may be a time in the future where the Republican Party then becomes just as greedy and corrupt and, shady as the other party, or gets infected by the military industrial complex or the deep state comes back. I'm hoping that we're able to squelch this, return the power to the people, but also, heal those that are in that victim box or operating in that fear feeling mentality.
Yeah. You reminded me of I was talking to a friend. I said, I want to help someone. And they said, did they ask for your help? I said, no, then you will not be able to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same situation. Sorry for Tommy. It's the same situation now. They don't, at least now, we are divided, Micah. That's for sure. I feel divided with them. And you were talking about this family member that wrote on your picture. It's like they have the right to have ideas and we have to accept them. But when we have different ideas from them, we are not accepted. I mean, weren't you the ones who were talking about acceptance? And I remember someone at the Kamala Harris rally who said, Jesus is my king. And she said, you're at the wrong rally. So weren't you saying that you are accepting everyone? And now all of a sudden you're not accepting uh, Christians or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So um, being so divided is going to be hard to get help. Maybe we have something to learn from them, maybe they have something to learn from us. It's not the superiority thing like they try to put on, right? It's we have to find our ways back to accepting in the normal term of acceptance, it's a normal term of acceptance, like you are a Democrat, I'm a liberal, whatever. In Europe we have liberals, conservatives. In Romania we have, for example, we have almost 7 parties, I think, political parties. In Denmark as well, socialists. That's what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we still get along here in Europe, but it started. I mean, what starts in the United States, somehow it transmits to the world, and it started to feel in Europe as well. This division, this lack of acceptance of our ideas instead of theirs, and so on. So what I think what we have to learn from it is trying to check the facts first of all. I feel it's the most important thing. Don't talk about it if you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I'm telling to my friends, I'm telling to my teenagers when I'm working with them. Don't talk about, I'm telling to my daughter as well. Don't talk about it if you don't know what you're talking about. Go and read about it. We have so many places to get information from now. But the most important is look into their what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So you can hear from the source what they're saying. And so this would be the first step, to try to fact check things and
Mm-hmm.
not just grab them from television
I
or
yeah,
whatever.
like I heard somebody say this, so it must be true,
Yeah,
or like just blind faith. And I think that's something that people want other people to kind of go to, right? That's why they have them in this victim box, in this feeling box. They want them to blindly believe without research what they're saying. And they've swung so far in one direction that even people that are in the middle are now, what they're calling far right. I mean, if you're in the middle, you you might as well be an enemy. And that's another thing. They've managed to make people angry at other people. So they've increased the division
yeah,
with their rhetoric, with their name calling, and that could go both ways. They've increased this division between people. They've managed to make that like the norm. So, like for me, I have people that, like I'm friends with that I don't agree with, but I'm not going to attack them. I mean, maybe I get in like a heated conversation, but at the end of that, I get pretty, but I can get in a passionate, heated conversation, but at the end of it, I'm not going to walk away from them. This is
hmm
bad. I've seen post videos on TikTok, on social media, where people are talking about leaving their husbands or boyfriends. They are talking about cutting family members off. They're talking about, I mean, we're talking about violent action against people. We're talking about I mean, even the haircutting act, while it's an act of protest, it technically could be considered, like an act of mutilation. And
For
I can't
example,
really
in
say too much here because I don't have, I shave it off by choice, not because I want to, not because my political opponent lost and I'm mad.
in Europe, someone who's shaving their hair is not like you intentionally, but in a moment of craziness, it's considered mentally ill, and it's put on medication. So if someone has a hard time and goes and shave their head, they're gonna be put on medication. This is how it is in Europe.
Mhm.
So it's
Even,
considered that you are on a verge of doing something bad.
mhm. I mean, it could be a precursor to like, like a psychological break or something like that. I mean, so like when you see those things, those people are afraid, but they're also more likely to react emotionally, which is impulsively, rather than logically, to the opposite person. So the person that voted different to them. So they may lash out physically, right? So what has happened? We've got the victim box. We've got the emotional box. I mean, they're technically the same box, but like we'll just categorize them this different. Victim emotional, but they've also managed to somehow like this is the belief system. How do you get people into this place? Well, you create the belief system. That belief system is the what they've managed to say is a moral high ground. So
Mm.
they get away with these emotional outbursts, with these tantrums, with less repercussions because they believe they have a moral high ground, or they believe they shouldn't get in trouble. In the real world they'll get in trouble, and that's another thing. Because of this weakness that our government has created in its own people in order to garner control. Like, I mean, I've saw posts about college students offering, petting zoos, coloring books, safe spaces. These are adults in the real world that are
Mhm.
needing these things. Companies offering, people not being able to go to work. This is a travesty, and it could be. I would consider it a crime against humanity. It's a abuse of a person, emotional and psychological abuse of a person that they are incapable of functioning after an event like this. It's not like somebody's kicking down their door and like trying to kill them or hurt them or take away like everything they have. These people are perceiving a problem, feeling it internally, and I believe that is the government's fault.
Yeah, I was thinking that they having a huge trauma, unfortunately, and um I'm not the one to blame people, but I would blame the government, of course, the media, the journalists. And what I was wondering, who's gonna pay for all this? Not with money. I mean, who's gonna pay for these crimes? Who's gonna pay for these sick people who might never get back on how they were, who will be lost in their gender identity or whatever other problems they had?
It's a
Who's gonna
perceived
help?
delusion. Yeah.
And this is how you find that you have so many addictions, people on the streets, and so on. Who's gonna pay for these people? Who's gonna pay for these crimes? Because there's no one to, I mean, it is impossible to punish like someone. How do you send them into court? I don't understand how, but it should happen. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some of them should go to prison,
Mm-hmm.
what they've been doing. And unfortunately, it happened something similar in Europe when the war in Ukraine started, and I lost some friends then because they were this propaganda with against Putin. And I told them, read about the guy. I'm not saying he's the best, but he's not the worst for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And read about there is a treaty they made. Russia made a treaty with Ukraine when Ukraine decided to become independent. I said, we agree with you to be independent, have your own language and so on. The only condition we have is not having NATO bases on your territory. And they signed the treaty at Minsk, and everything went very well until NATO decided that they wanted a base in Ukraine. And if you think about what happened in Cuba when the communists wanted to send nuclear weapons, and Kennedy said, "I'm gonna fire the world if this happens," or when Japan wanted to put some bases in Mexico, and they send what? Nuclear weapons in Japan, right? So of course, none of these powers want this kind of military base from their said enemies, right?
Mhm.
Close. So Putin didn't want this too. And I asked these friends, please read, just don't listen to me or some. I never wanted to push this on them. Just read about the Minsk Treaty, what they talked about, what the conditions were, who didn't follow the treaty, and so on. They didn't want to read it, so they are really not it's like they're, like you said, they're blind to any of the arguments you give them. They just know one thing and they just follow that like crazy.
Mhm. Now, we talked a
And
lot on this
let me
podcast.
say let me say one more thing, Micah, sorry. They're not stupid people, they're educated people. They're not uneducated. They went to schools, they are doctors, they are professors, and still this thing stuck on them.
Mhm. And that's okay. I'm going to touch on that real quick. So, a lot of the people that are educated are voting one way because they've been through that machine, right? So it's like
Oh,
the
yes.
you know what I mean? So like they go through like schools, and then instead of like doing something else, they go to college, right? And so they come out. A lot of college students, free think, or they, like they vote the other way. But a lot of majority of people that come out of college vote one way.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, I mean, you see that the education, right? So they've kind of like cornered that area too. Now here's something, a little brain toggler before we close out of here, right? We in both of our countries, we see different countries as bad, right? So you may see one country as bad, I may see it that country is good, I may see a country as bad, you may see that country as good. But here's the big catch is that when our people are told that something is a fact and they are pushed that belief system that entire time. They don't look it up, right?
Yeah.
While also that person's government is operating exactly the same as the countries that they're being told are bad are operating. In some cases, that could be even worse because they're operating under the guise of being not abusive when they actually are. So that's
Just like
kind of
the
some.
narcissists. Exactly like the narcissists.
Mhm.
We
That's
should be so careful. I think we are very we should educate our kids to learn how to check for facts, informate themselves. We should try to educate ourselves in the real acceptance, because this acceptance that I've been talking about was only it was one-sided. So the majority became minority, and that's not good.
Hey, everybody, if you like the video, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then check out the links in the description box below for both of our websites. And we'll catch you in the next one.